It's my hope that you will be watching this at home at a comfortable, reasonable hour of the morning on a snow day. However, if tomorrow, January 16th, is not a snow day, you may be watching this in the classroom because I don't think I want to do it twice. Anyway, what we have to talk about in LA3 today are your AP thesis prompts, the thesis themselves, the whole essays, and what we're going to be doing with Transcendentalism and A Tale of Two Cities. So while I'm thinking about it, let's start with the end. I ask you to do an exercise from everyday use in establishing a character from Tale of Two Cities. And I must admit, I am looking forward to seeing if you figured that out, because I'm not sure that I have yet. So it will be leniently graded, if at all. I like to reward the amount of work you put into something with points, but I don't know what I'm looking for. I do know this, however. What we are going to be looking at in Tale of Two Cities from the point of view of A.P. Lang is the themes. What are the big overarching themes of A Tale of Two Cities? And one of them is revolution. One of the prompts that you could choose to write on from the national debate was on civil disobedience. And I think it's very important that we look at civil disobedience both from a prompt point of view and from the opposite of revolution point of view. Civil disobedience meaning nonviolent, restrained refusal to go along with an unjust law, as opposed to complete revolution, which is what they had in France during the French Revolution. So having told you what the end result is going to be, you're going to compare civil disobedience in Henry David Thoreau's document, Civil Disobedience, to what you saw in Tale of Two Cities and Revolution. But for right now, okay, that's the end. Let's start at the beginning. And let's look at your thesis statements that you submitted. There were two that several of you did. Three of you did the one on the Electoral College. Two of you did civil disobedience. And I think there are some overlaps there. I'd like to comment on these theses. The first one we have here is to promote a more equal democracy, the U.S. should use a direct popular vote for presidential elections. Now, why do I underline those keywords? You have to define your terms. What do you mean by promote? That is implying that it's something we have to ask for, earn, choose, make available. The other concern I've got is, what do you mean by an equal democracy? The very definition of democracy is one vote, one per person. That is what a democracy is. So if we have a democracy, we are already an equal status by law. How can you be more equal? I think there's a wording problem here, and I don't think the author of this thesis really tapped into what he or she was trying to say. But that's my opinion. I find it a muddy thesis. It does not have the clarity, and it doesn't tell me what issues they're going to bring up or how they're going to achieve a promotion of something we already have. The next one, The U.S. ought to replace the Electoral College with a direct national vote, popular vote. The support was several presidents have been elected who were not supported by the majority, and the votes of states with low populations equal or exceed states with larger populations. I know a lot of you kids are taking American history and AP government, and I am not an expert in these fields at all, but number one, if those two things are factual, they're not arguments, they're facts. There is no argument in this thesis, and that's my concern. Number two, do you know how the Electoral College is chosen? Because it's chosen on the basis of population and legal representation. So you have to have a popular vote, a winner in a popular vote, in order for those electoral votes to go with the winner. So we do have a popular vote system. It just is run through the checks and balances of the Electoral College. The third one, but my biggest objection, besides philosophically, obviously, is that there's no argument there. I want to know what you're going to say to prove that we need a direct national vote. The U.S. should replace the Electoral College with a national popular vote because, and that is the key right there, the Electoral College takes the true individual freedom out of voting. Again, you're going to have those terms defined. It's intriguing, but I don't know if it's supportable. Okay, so those are my objections to the statements on the Electoral College and the fact that I don't think you understand the Electoral College. Not sure anyone does, but it is pretty clear in practice that the electors are chosen based on population because it's the number of U.S. representatives a state has is based on the state's population. So it's a direct ratio of popular vote. Okay, at any rate. Civil disobedience in a democracy is morally justified. A democracy is a system of government that is run by the people, and if the people do not agree with their government, these people's actions of disobedience are justified as they are within accordance of the intent of a democracy. I think that's circular reasoning. I could be wrong. But here's the thing. If a democracy is a government that is run by the people, and the people do not agree with their government, the people can replace their government. It does not need a civil disobedience. Replacement of those in power is built into the Constitution. So I don't think you have a clear understanding of what civil disobedience is. And you're going to need to argue this case. You're going to need to have actual examples of civil disobedience. The next one, civil disobedience in a democracy is morally justified because it is an effective way of protesting, can keep the government in check, and bring attention to important issues. That's the best thesis that's up there because it is clear what the argument is going to be. I think there is some good evidence for an effective way of protesting. I think there's excellent evidence for bringing attention to important issues, and I have no clue if civil disobedience can help keep the government in check, because usually civil disobedience is done by people who really have no power. So that's a wild card to me. But if the author can think of ways to give examples and support, I'd say go for it. So those are what you have turned in so far. As you can tell, I'm not really very happy with these as thesis yet. The point is, for all of these, you have to have something that you can argue. You have to have an opinion, not just facts. Okay, now, how does this relate to transcendentalism? In everyday use, there is a copy of Civil Disobedience by Henry David Thoreau, and I'm going to want you to read that. I also need you to read the background. You're not going to be tested on it. You can skim it. But if you go to Cliff Notes online, you can get his whole educational background, a summary of everything he wrote. But I will tell you that Civil Disobedience is probably the most significant document that came out of the transcendental movement. It is well thought out. And the point is, a man has a right to disobey an unjust law if there is a higher law that he is following. And that means to be a civil disobedient person, you have to have a clear moral compass and be in tune with higher orders. And that is a very interesting proposition in itself. It does not need any particular labeled faith. It takes a concept of rightness. So at any rate, Civil Disobedience is not an easy read, but it is a short read, and it is in the book Everyday Use. So there'll be more on the Moodle about this, but I wanted to at least tell you where we're going with civil disobedience compared to revolution, and we're going to have to look for more examples of what civil disobedience is. To that end, we're going to watch the final debate from the great debaters. Stay tuned.